much for inviting me to this, and it's been exciting. It's been a pleasure to read this book and to be able to participate today. So thank you for that. First question you could ask is why have you written this book, and what's the purpose of this? I would say that, and I know that from previous talks to Dr. Pitso, that this is it's about development of teaching and learning, and eventually at the end we want to improve the students' learning in the disciplines, of course. But the book in itself is promoting development of teaching and learning, and it will certainly help to share knowledge and experience in academia. So in this short introduction, I will not go into details about the content of the book, etc. I will make some general reflections and then point to some things that I picked up when I read the book. One of the things I would like to say first is that conversations about teaching and learning are very important in academia. And if we can support and stimulate conversations among academics about teaching and learning, very much is one towards the development of teaching and learning at our universities. So I think this book is an important artifact that will support and stimulate conversations. And then I mean informed conversations, scholarly conversations, research-based, and because of that, developmental conversations. Of course, you can do that in many ways, but at our universities, we have to have arenas where it's possible for our colleagues to come together and participate in conversations. You can do that, of course, at different levels, etc. And I know at VUT you have already a campus conference where I was invited, a very nice conference 2-3 years ago now, with high quality and lots of people attending. And that's one arena that's important. But you could also think about less sophisticated arenas, maybe, that are easily accessible. And I mean arenas where ordinary teachers in the discipline would like to participate. Maybe just a page, maybe just something like, I have done this and this, and if they do that in a scholarly way, it will certainly promote the conversations at the universities. So arenas are important. What levels are we working with? There's an article from Paul Ashwin and Keith Trigwell that some of you might have read. It's from 2004, and they are discussing different levels of investigations, personal, local, and public. This book would then certainly be at least at the, or mainly at the local level. It's a book for VUT, but also for South Africa and for the world. So it's a book at the local level, but intended also for the public level. We want people to engage. We want people to take teaching and learning more seriously and more scholarly, and that's the personal level. At the personal level, you use the literature, you perform observations, you evaluate your teaching, you talk with colleagues, etc. And that's fine. But if you want to make an impact, you should at least go up one level to the local level, and that's what you have done now. Then you get this book and the different chapters in the book, and colleagues can discuss what's in it and take it further and use it. And of course, hopefully this book will be read and used at other South African and outside of the country universities. The individual teachers at the personal level, when they develop, when they become more and more scholarly, they will eventually, hopefully, go further and do more systematic observations and analysis and generate their own knowledge, as the participants in this book have done. Also, when they do this, they present findings and sometimes even research that can be built on by others. And so that is very important. It's very important that you have a book like this because it's documented and it's public and people can relate to it in different ways. So that's the general parts of what I think this is an excellent book, and it's one arena of many that you can use to promote teaching and learning at universities. If I should just pick one thing that struck me, that was in the introductory chapter, I came across a notion that I haven't heard before, and that was informed subjectivity. You were discussing, and that was a reference as well, I don't remember that now. You were discussing the dichotomy between objectivity and informed subjectivity, and then somewhere in the middle was pragmatism or pragmatic teaching. I liked it really much, and because I haven't heard it before, but this is what we do. We shouldn't be afraid to be subjective, but it should be, because we always are, but it should be informed. So I think that was a very nice way of putting it. Also, objectivity, that's a difficult word. And I mean, what does it mean? Are we objective, and what is something that is objective? That's difficult to say. To summarize a little bit, this book is about critical reflections on practices, which is exactly what we want to strengthen and increase at our universities. It's about learning. This book, especially for academic developers, but I mean, you could easily think about similar books or less sophisticated books for teachers in the disciplines. But it's about learning at VUT primarily, I think. That's what, at least I guess that was your intention from the start. But then, of course, learning at South African higher education, and also spreading it to the world. I will do my best to spread it here anyway. So, I also really liked the philosophical reflections, especially in the last chapters, where you tied it all together and discussed these different perspectives. One of the things that I remember especially here, and I have heard about this many times before when I have visited South Africa, is the notion of decolonization of higher education. This is, of course, extremely important in your country. Here, people wouldn't really think about it. But what I thought is, when I read this, I mean, I understand decolonization. I understand the main reason for this, and I certainly understand who colonized before and who put all those things in your hands. But what I also think is very important here is that we can really learn from this, because decolonization is also, if I understand it correctly, an epistemological aspect of this, that you can get knowledge from different perspectives. And it doesn't have to be the white European, North American way of getting knowledge. We can very much learn from each other and get knowledge in different ways from different perspectives.
Okay.
And that is something I think is very important with this notion of decolonization. And it's one of the things where we have a lot to learn. So finally, I would just like to say that the result of this book, I think, is that increased engagement that will promote the development of teaching and learning at VUT, South Africa, and also hopefully at other institutions around the world. And that it will promote informed discussions and documentation that are crucial for this development. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Thomas. How's the weather outside?
Pardon?
How's the weather?
The weather, it's 25 degrees and sun is shining, so it's really nice.
Yeah. We're in cold here. It's load shedding, so we're not doing very well.
I don't think it's that cold. Never is.
So, thank you very much for supporting this project and being here today and making the time to be here. I will pick it up. You'll be with us until the launch. I don't think it will be very long. I want to bring in Professor Msila, if he's around. Prof?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, how are you?
I'm fine. Are you well?
And apologies for keeping misspelling your name.
That is fine. That was solved. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I also really appreciate the fact that you are reviewing the book and you really help us improve its quality. I really appreciate that very much, and I think this is not the first of the last conversations with you. Then we've started a journey that we can continue talking, and like Thomas is saying, holding these deep, reflective conversations to try and understand what is teaching and learning at this point, at this juncture, in this context of whatever is happening now globally, at the country level, at the continental level, and indeed at the higher education level, right up to the university level, even a unit level. So those conversations, we're going to have to continue with them and so on. I always talk about identity and alienation, and that maybe we're trying to search for what we are as academic developers. And in doing so, what discourses do we alienate? And which ones do we signify something like that? So I'd like to give you time now to also have an opportunity to say a word or two.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Pitso. And I'd also like to thank the colleagues who are here. I see you've made me meet my former boss at UNISA, Professor Dzvimbo. Yes, that was nice. My dean. That was my dean. I learned a lot from him. Yes. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thanks for the opportunity to be part of this panel today. Taking from where Prof Olsson ended, I would also like to say I found these marvelous presentations, these chapters, and I've asked myself several questions like, what makes this book important? Why is it different? And why is it timely? All these for me were very critical questions as I was reading the work, and I was privileged enough to be one of the first people to read the manuscript when it was very raw, and I could see the treasure that the book contained. And looking at the various themes, very critical in the changing environment, teaching excellence, mathematics, the support. I like that one in particular, because you find that students from historically disadvantaged schools, they really struggle when they come to university. Apart from language, they struggle in subjects like mathematics. So there are discussions on maturity, student evaluation, blended learning, and of course, new paradigms. All these I found very critical as we look at a transforming university. We know currently that the South African higher education institution is gradually transforming, although some are saying very slowly, but I think we are slowly getting where we should be. Although again, that is very contentious as to what kind of, what end result do we really want? I'll read a bit from my notes.
Okay.
Over the past decades, academic development took shape in higher education institutions, although to my opinion, it remains much underrated and professional development emphasis differs from one facilitator to the other, from one institutions to the other. Yet, as one author states, academic development practice is a form of artistry and a concrete science. I find this science as reflected in this book critical for two reasons. On the one hand, the teachers unmask their practice and they narrate their experiences, while on the other, they demonstrate how their practice impacts on the academic community in ways that show the reader the relationship between theory and practice. In fact, this is the strong point of the book, that usually in books like these, you find that there is so much theory, but it is not backed up by practice. But here you find a balance. Throughout this book, there's a balance of theory and practice. So the book enables us to navigate through the possibilities of the future in the academia. The current COVID-19 experience is informing us about many possibilities for future, especially with regards to professional development. Among the challenges faced by South African higher education institutions are to reflect the cultural diversity of its multicultural society. Education needs to reflect the environment in which these institutions are situated. Topical subjects such as Africanization of the curriculum, embracing democratic ideals, and use of technology have all posed a number of challenges to faculty who yearn to transform their practice. As faculty face these and other societal challenges, they also need to focus on quality and the changing culture within institutions. Faculty is affected by the shifts in institutional culture. Furthermore, they face the introduction of new programs, as well as many other challenges necessitated by access and redress strategies. In some institutions, where there is mixed mode delivery, faculty needs to be reskilled to be generalist rather than specialist. The system requires them to be able to develop materials, facilitate learning in contact sessions, and be able to use technology, among other things. Our classrooms need transformational pedagogy, and I think that academic development practices accommodate this. One author, Daniel, points out that the achievement of mega universities poses a challenge to conventional academic practice, because they show that a different approach to teaching can be more successful than lecturing. Of course, in many institutions, we're still dabbling with this. As the changes in the education system, one embrace the faculty is expecting to facilitate teaching and learning that would result in far-reaching changes in the learners than does learning in general. Excuse me. Austin, for instance, distinguishes between two terms, change and transformation. She states that transformation is more intense than change, and it requires new kinds of thinking about values and how they are expressed and about how work is organized. Therefore, transformational learning refers to learning that shapes people, making them different afterwards in ways that they and others could recognize. Faculty needs to embrace what Paulo Freire refers to as critical consciousness. Freire argues that education should conscientize learners and should move away from traditional model of banking. In fact, looking at the chapters, I find that this is really a Freirean pedagogy where there's a lot of, it preaches a lot of involvement from students so that they become part of the learning process, which is very critical. And the emphasis in all these chapters is actually learning rather than teaching. He also believes that education should foster a dialogue between the learner and the educator, and this should lead to freedom and autonomy of the learners. I was excited to see the semblance of this in the chapters. Faculty needs to understand the impact of transformational pedagogy on practice. They also need to know the objective of facilitating learning with the students. Some writers have also shared common elements about transformational learning. They share a humanistic vision of the person by believing that people are capable of change and free to act in the world. They also maintain that knowledge is a construction that people make rather than objective truth that they discover. Finally, these three believe that democratic vision of society is what individuals create for their collective futures. Faculty should embrace the idea of transformational teaching as they move away from the conventional approaches. The traditional approach to education includes some or all the following elements: lecture presentation, teacher as authority and knowledge expert, a hierarchical power structure in the classroom, and learners as mostly passive recipients of knowledge who regurgitate back their understanding of content in examinations. Freirean lists criticisms addressed by transformational approach to education. New faculty and veteran faculty members need to develop an approach to address these criticisms when they reflect on their facilitation of learning. They also need introspection that enables them to examine their teaching styles, reflection, and academic development. Conventional approach discussed above fosters inequitable social divisions and hinders attempts to build a peaceful and just social order. Students are encouraged to compete with one another and to achieve the best grades. Some students lose for others to win. This breaks the sense of community among students. Conventional approach promotes passivity towards teachers and other authority figures. In these classrooms, the students are taught in an unquestioning way to digest information offered to them in a lecture format. Traditional classes are characterized by the use of power over, instead by more empowering use of power with. Students in these classes learn from the hidden curriculum to submit to authority, not to become questioning and proactive. When teachers use their positions as authorities to control students, they reinforce the dominant social order. The conventional educational practice may socialize learners to value authority, the state preparing the learners to defend the status quo. You know, what I like about many of these chapters is that they seem to be seeing the students as co-creators of knowledge rather than people who sit in the lecture halls to receive just from the teachers, from the faculty members who are teaching. Bar and Tag draw up the nature of roles under instruction paradigm and learning paradigm. This nature of roles endorses Gibbon's and Scott's arguments above. Among others, faculty needs to assume multidisciplinary approaches as they facilitate knowledge. The students need to find solutions for a number of societal problems. Finnegan cites Rost, who contends that many university departments are composed of active scholars engaged in similar subjects, encourage more faculty productivity, but they also limit explorations of cross-disciplinary perspectives. Finnegan adds that in the past few years, a considerable amount of knowledge has been advanced by scholars crossing discipline boundaries. Training and research done within the African context focuses on the various disciplines. When faculty are not compartmentalized into disciplinary departments, the curriculum is likely to assume this interdisciplinary character, as well as to focus on student needs rather than the context of singular fields. Interdisciplinary approaches prepare students to assume scholastic thinking that could make them efficient in future. South African universities are gradually moving towards addressing this need. This is what Boyer refers to this integration of disciplines as scholarship of integration. Again, something that I found very much in several of the chapters as I was reading the manuscript. For Boyer, scholarship integration is closely related to discovery, and it also involves doing research at the boundaries where fields converge. Furthermore, he avers that scholarship of integration also means interpretation, fitting one's own research into larger intellectual patterns. The call for scholarship integration also comes at a time when information technology is gaining ground, posing additional challenges. This book, Contextualized Critical Reflections on Academic Development Practice, is about many of the above elements. The contributors explicate novel ways of teaching. These need faculty that emphasize professional development. In all institutions of higher learning, we admit many students who are underprepared in poor schools every year. The practice reflected in this book are a missing link to redress the challenges these students encounter at institutions of higher learning. I would like to say congratulations to the editor of the book, Dr. Teboho Pitso, as well as the publishers for producing such a book, not forgetting the contributors as well. I thank the organizers of this event for inviting me. Thank you. Ukwanda kwaliwang mtagati.
We'll try to get interpretation. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate all the things you've said today and being part of this project up to this point. And I hope moving forward into the future, we could look at possibilities of collaboration. So thank you very much. I truly appreciate this. What I've picked up to now from the two speakers, I think Thomas has raised an issue around epistemic justice, the politics of knowledge, when he said the status of knowledge from the global north and global south has to be almost at an equal level, and we can draw from both, and it brings the issue of integration that we're talking about. That has to be greater integration around it. But I think one of the things when you talk about transformational learning, which is very interesting for me, is this idea that over time, our undergraduate learning has been more like a socially empty kind of teaching, where issues of social justice, epistemic justice, reverse innovations, those issues were not very prominent. You would not in an engineering undergraduate classroom necessarily find debates around social justice, issues of inequality and employment and so on. And I think these are the kind of discourses that must be an integral part of what you term professional learning, transformational learning. So yeah, maybe we'll have to explore that concept further and maybe even think of a possible book collaboration around that. Thank you very much. I really appreciate this. Professor Dzvimbo, and for all those who are here, thank you very much. I hope you are still listening. I hope you are still throwing some few questions to our panelists, not to me, to panelists. Prof Dzvimbo, can we give you time? This book, just a quick background. This book, the idea was initiated by Prof Dzvimbo, who, after listening to what was going on in the academy.
Thank you. M1.
Yes,
yeah,
Prof.
I probably am one. I said thank you very much for the invite.
Okay.
I probably am one of the luckiest people around this discussion, because yes. I first met Dr. Pitso in 2014 when I joined the Vaal University of Technology as the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Research. And I just bumped into his office. Dr. Tabane was there and two other people. And I started talking about the excellent work that they were doing in teaching and learning. and how that work needs to be documented so that other people can have access to it. So I think what has happened today is that that dream, that vision, that project, that discussion has now become a reality. And I'm extremely grateful, and I congratulate all of you that have taken part in this project. I have just a very few comments which are in praise of what you have done. The first comment I want to make, Dr. Pitso, colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, is that in the new normal in the academy, we require different strategies for understanding the functions of knowledge as a material discourse practice, as we teach, as we interact with students, as we interact with other academics. That teaching and learning must become a material discourse in practice. Why? And here I quote one of my favorite authors, Etienne Wenger, that learning is first and foremost the ability to negotiate new meanings reflexively as communities of practice. We are communities with our students, with our colleagues, with people even outside the academy. And secondly, pedagogically, the academic becomes the interpreter and not the legislator. That theme comes up very clearly in all the chapters, that the academic is a co-constructor of knowledge in the classroom, outside the classroom, and even virtually. So for me, these are the merits of this volume. That learning, the way it was talked about in the book, it creates emergent structures that enable both students and staff to interact at a particular conceptual level. And that learning is fundamentally experiential and fundamentally social. This has now been enhanced by the deleterious impact of the COVID pandemic, which on the other hand, in my view, has been positive, because we have to rethink the way we think about teaching and learning in the university. Therefore, this reform process in teaching and learning that is clearly articulated in this volume, for me, must help all of us, especially of our students, to prepare for the world of tomorrow. And why? Why? I see in the chapters that you are concerned on how students think about what they know and how they know what they know. You're also concerned with what knowledge in all the disciplines is all about. And Professor Thomas talked earlier on about the need for a decolonial epistemic. I see people coming up with a decolonial epistemic about teaching and learning, about how we produce, distribute knowledge within the academy, and how students individually and collectively begin to know online. So for me, what comes out very clear in the book is how epistemic cognition influences learning and reasoning among students, between students and academics, and between academics and other academics. So this is why I think what the book is saying to us is that there is a need for us to come up with a social epistemology which enables us to consider the word learning, not as standing alone, but as embodying a range of historically constructed values, priorities, dispositions, and even the politics of teaching and learning, and the politics of the location of the students in what we do in the classroom. I just want to end my own submission by going back to one of my favorite authors, Linda Darling Hammond. She just came up with a volume on what she calls deep learning. It's primarily for teachers. But I like what she talks about, that learning has to be developmentally grounded and personalized. And this comes out also clearly in the volume that we are talking about. And that learning has to be contextualized. The context in which learning is taking place becomes so important. In the context of South Africa, whether students, like at the Valley University of Technology, we are surrounded by townships, and we are surrounded by a developing economy. We are surrounded by a particular politics. This should then frame what happens in the lecture room and what happens, virtually outside the lecture room when students are learning on their own and among themselves in terms of peer-to-peer learning. That learning occurs, it has to occur in productive communities of practice. That the communities of practice have an answer of what we do, because it's students, it's academics or teachers, and it's even those that support the teaching function in a university who are not actually involved, with students. And finally, to say that learning has to be equitable and oriented towards social justice, especially in the context. It has to focus, it has to support, it has to enhance, it has to push, paradigmatically these issues of social justice, so that students are then part and parcel of the center, so that they don't remain within the margins. I thank you, but I really want to congratulate Dr. Pitso and all the contributors to the volume for coming up with this fantastic book. I want to promise you, I will probably do another seminar here on the book with my colleagues that are involved in quality assurance and in teaching and learning in the Zimbabwean context, because that is the environment within which I learn. But thank you very much, and for the opportunity to meet colleagues that I haven't met for quite a long time. Thank you very much, Dr. Pitso, and well done. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. It was good hearing you. Thank you very much. And the issues you raised are very important. Thank you very much. I don't know what to say. Thank you for making the time. And thank you for bringing this. When you started talking to me about this book, it was really something that I said, can we even do this? And when it finally materialized after a really long journey, we were really grateful. The first person I thought about was you. Hard copies are on the way. Thank you very much for being here today and for all the support you gave us and the way you showed. I really want to appreciate you for that. At this point in time, I think these conversations will be ongoing, and this is not our last meeting. I think we'll keep talking with you over time. At this point in time, I think we're moving now to question and answer. I assume our three speakers are still here, I presume. Thomas? Is Thomas still around?
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Prof Msila?
Yes, I'm still here.
I'll probably open now for questions. Carla, I don't know how this is done. Can you now make us aware of the possible questions that are asked? Is Carla around here?
Okay, so one question did come through saying that this is an interesting book to read where the authors share their reflections. And the question is, can we expect another version based on the reflections of teaching and learning during the COVID-19 pandemic? And also, how do we see the future of higher education moving forward?
Any of my speakers who wants to answer the question? The first one I can answer. The whole idea of critical reflection, and I think at the end of the book I'm making it clear, that the next version will definitely be on the cards, because this is work in progress. And somewhere in the introductory part, we show how we're moving from one critical reflection to a higher level, like searching for a continuous search for a higher design, a better way of doing things. So we'll continue to do that. So the second version is on its way. As regards the second question, I think any of the speakers can answer that. Prof Msila? Prof Msila, are you here?
I am here. Kala, would you please, can you please repeat the second question?
Yes, so the second question is, how do we see the future of higher education moving forward?
It's a very good question, but it's not an easy question to answer. You know, because if you listen to the current debates even on decolonization of the institutions. There are so many trajectories that come out of that debate. And remember, education, it's where you'll find that people tend to haggle over what education should really succeed, what education should really lead toward. So it is not a very easy question to answer that one. And you'll find that education is like a project that is ongoing. It's not like we know the destination. So that is also what makes this question a very complex and very difficult to answer. But education is evolving, and from time to time we will see that we have moved from this place to that place. But it is very difficult really to say this is the direction that it is taking. Especially what I've said earlier, looking at the current debates in South African higher education landscape, where there's a lot of haggling. Some of the people not even believing in the ideals that some others groups believe in. So yeah, that's my take. I can talk about this for a longer time, but I want to give over to my colleagues as well.
Okay. Prof. Thomas?
Yeah, what's discussed here quite a lot is, of course, COVID-19. And I mean, everyone is so tired of COVID-19, but it will be around for years,
Sure.
the discussion at least. And how much of this, the digital revolution, or what you want to call it, that has been forced upon us will continue and stay on. And some are quite enthusiastic, and of course we will not have normal lecturers in the future. I hope we will, and I think we will, because of course you can have a lecture digitally, and it will often be quite as good. But students want to meet. They want arenas. They want to get together.
Sure.
They don't want. They are so tired of sitting one in each apartment and looking at a computer. So I'm not sure. I think it'll be, of course, it will be a mixture, but I think we will go back to quite a lot of meeting, and I hope so.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say one thing more when I'm here, and that's because Professor Msila said something about the book, which I don't think I really got to say when I had the chance, and that was about practice. That this book is about practice, and also, and especially, and that's so very, very important, because I think that many academics, most of us, we can read articles, read a few books, and then we can write a chapter about theory. But we can't write a chapter about practice unless we do the practice. So I think that's one of the things that are very special and very good about this book. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Prof. Dzvimbo, the future of higher education?
Just a brief one. I think what the COVID pandemic has done is really to restructure the way we think and practice about higher education. Before the pandemic, we were struggling to push academics to teach online. We were struggling to push our government to ensure that the ICT environment in our nations is conducive to teaching and learning online. And now it is almost becoming the norm that students have to learn online, that academics have to teach or engage with students online. So what was very abnormal has now become the new normal. And I always say to my colleagues who are planning higher education that we really need to exercise a lot of caution and thinking, because the massive infrastructures that we're building are most likely going to become anachronistic. Because when you look at the trajectory of how we are utilizing e-learning or a blended mode of teaching and learning, and how we assess and examine students, this is the present, but most importantly, it is the future of higher education beyond the imagination of all of us. And like I said earlier on, we now then need to rethink the way we think and imagine about the appellation called higher education and the university. So we really need to change the genetic code of the university or higher education inside out, so that we are able to operate in this new environment that has been made possible by the very sophisticated and complex affordances of ICT. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much. Kala, any other question? Probably the last one. I don't want to hold them too long.
No, those are all the questions.
Come again?
Those are all the questions. There aren't any more.
Thank you very much. Can I try to sum up and say thank you very much to Prof Thomas Olsson for making time to be with us here in cold South Africa. Prof Msila will be in touch. Thank you very much for being with us in this journey, and it is a journey that will continue. And I think with what you said today, we can develop the second version of this book with your inputs and everything. So we'll be in touch. Prof Dzvimbo, again, thank you very much. When you told me that we can do this, I didn't believe it. And we did it, and thank you very much. I truly appreciate this. And my colleagues, I think Teboho is here, Mema Mteawe, Mandewa, are you here? I think you are here, Manini, thank you for being here. And all those people that I didn't see, thank you very much for being on this launch. I truly appreciate it, but the publisher's Kala, Vikas, I don't know whether she's here. She's been very patient with me. Are you around here, Vikas? Is she here?
No, unfortunately, Vikas couldn't be here this evening, but I will definitely pass it on to him.
Do that for me, please. I will leave it to you now to end it, and thank you very much for organizing this. And again, to my speakers, thank you for making the time and the quality of discussion and debates you raised today. Thank you very much. We're going to listen to this and listen to it and see what we can take from it as we move forward. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate this.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Pitso. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Prof. Oh, thank you. Thomas, last word. Last word.
I will again thank you very much for this. I do hope that that you will continue this, and that you will continue to create arenas for discussions about teaching and learning, all through at other universities as well in South Africa.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom. We'll be in touch.
Yes.
And pass my regards at home.
Same to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here. Prof Dzvimbo?
Thank you very much for this golden opportunity, and I am extremely excited. I'll go and have a glass of wine for dinner to celebrate what we talked about in 2014. Thank you very much.
Prof Msila, you have the last word.
No, I would also like to say thank you very much, especially for meeting such wonderful colleagues to discuss this in this cold afternoon. Yes, thank you for the opportunity that you accorded me. And I'm so privileged to be amongst the first readers of the manuscript. So before it was even born, I had read it. Thank you so much. I wish you good luck in future projects, and hoping that we'll be able to collaborate in some of your future projects. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. We'll be in touch. To all my colleagues and everybody who was here, thank you very much. Kala, can I give you the last word? Kala?
Yes, so thank you for everyone for attending, for putting the time aside. We wish everyone a good evening or good afternoon, depending on your time difference. So yes, have a good evening, and thank you for being here.
Okay, good night.